Awkward moments every plumber has to deal with. Sooner or later in the plumbing industry, you're going to run into a moment where you look at something and you're like, oh shit, what do I do or how do I handle this? So if you get value out of these videos and you love for your opinion to be heard, do me a favor, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on anything. So first of all, have y'all ever seen the picture of a guy, he's laying on the sidewalk and literally the upper half of his body is laid down in a hole in the water? Now, this is something that I ran into when I was younger. Now, luckily, my head wasn't underwater, but also I wasn't working on clean, potable water. Now, I know the water doesn't look clean, but it's because it's been running there in the mud. What I had to do was work in a ditch filled with sewage water. Now, I was in the ditch up to about my waist, and the pipe was down about my knees. So literally, I'm squatting down, trying to slide a Fernco gasket on to actually get something sealed off where the sewage will quit leaking out in this hole. It's not a great thing. It's not something that I was proud of, but I was also the youngest guy. Now, I'm in here, and of course I'm thinking, man, my plumbing career can never get any worse than this. Well, eventually it does, but at that young age, I got in, did what needed to be done, and got it taken care of. Now, would I do things a little different these days? Probably so, but then again, we've got diseases and stuff these days that we didn't even worry about back then. So things have changed a lot. But here's the thing as a plumber, you're gonna get in a situation where you've got to do things. You've got to do things maybe you don't wanna do. One of the other ones that I dealt with that I would definitely do different now, I went over to a house, it was an elderly lady, and she had a leak under her crawl space. We actually opened the scuttle hole, saw how much water there was, turned her water off, and this lady's like, look, I cannot go without water, I have nowhere to go. So I crawled down under her house in about 12 inches of water and crawled around until I could find the leak. So I had another plumber going out front and turning it on and off, and we had to put down a ton of plastic for me to get out of this house. But I mean, think about that. Nowadays, I understand with electrical wires and things like that under there, it's a lot more dangerous than I gave it credit for. But I felt like it was something that I had to do. The customer called, they had a problem, and I was there to fix it. Now, it doesn't always turn out that good. I have actually heard of plumbers getting shocked under a house. I know of some companies that will not climb under a house until they shut all the power down. That's probably a good, safe way to go. But not just under a house. What about up in an attic? When you crawl across an attic and you land on live wires, trust me, you're gonna say, oh shit. And it's gonna scare the heck out of you. It's not a good thing to happen. There's some other ones. Whenever you go to unstop a toilet, and I'm gonna show you 3 pretty bad ones, but then I'm gonna tell you about the one I walked into earlier in my plumbing career. Now, when you look at this one, yeah, that's not good. It's backed up to the very top. You've got a plunger over here, so apparently it happens often, and it looks like you've got a lot of water standing in the floor. So this is really not a great one. Now, here's another one. Yeah, now see, that's close to one I came across that I'll tell you about here in just a moment. And then we got another one here. Yeah, that just, man, I'd be afraid of what's living in there. You look at this stuff floating around up top. You look how nasty that is now. Don't get me wrong, there's not a lot of fecal remnants in here or anything like that, but it does not look good. When I first started running service work in my career, I actually got called out to some Section 8 housing here in Dallas. Went to an apartment complex that literally, it was like a dorm, like a barrack or something. Literally, there was a door on each end of the building. There was a hallway that went down the middle. There were stairs outside to go upstairs to do the exact same thing. And when you walk down this corridor, most of the doors were open. And I'm going through and I'm looking at the doors and figuring out where I'm at. By the time I got to the unit that had called about a stopped up toilet, I knew it. I mean, you could smell it out in the hall. So I walked in, literally look at this lady sitting over on the couch, and she just pointed back there. She said,
it's back there.
Didn't even have time to tell her who I was. She saw me carrying my tool bag and my plunger, and I came walking in. And I gotta tell you, it was a combination between this one that is completely full and this one that is full of fecal remnants.
3, 2, 1, go!
It was like that, but it was piled up. It was overflowing the top. They had been just throwing toilet tissue on the trash can next to it, which had also completely overflowed, and they'd done nothing about that either. As a plumber, as somebody new in the trades, I didn't know how to handle it. I actually walked out to the truck, called my office and said, hey, y'all need to get someone else out here. Now, I've got a pretty bad gag reflex, so to see me choke just walking in and seeing that, I knew if I got in there and tried to work on it, it wasn't going to be any prettier than it was. It was going to look like this with a little bunch of upchuck all over it too. So I called my office and told them, I need y'all to get someone else out here. I can't do this. Well, they told me if I left, I would be fired, and I was, but you know what? I was okay with that.
You're fired!
Now, if you're a homeowner, how far would you let something like this go before you called somebody? I mean, literally, we got called that day, and you could tell by looking at it, this had gone on for a while. So another OSHA moment that almost every plumber has to deal with. There's really a couple. We got a call from a lady that said, look, I need somebody to come fix a leak under my house. The city's going to cut the water off. Now, we hear stuff like that often, so we don't always believe it. But we called the city, and they said, no, you're right. We are going to cut the water off, and we're being as lenient with her as we can. So we get out there. This lady is in a wheelchair. Her husband has dementia. Her son is blind. And when I walked in, and number one, when I walked up to the house, the yard was soaking wet. I mean, you could tell where it was leaking from under her house down to the house next door. And that's who had filed a complaint because their foundation was getting wet and their dogs were having to live in this. So I went out and looked at it. When I walked into the house, she rolls up in a wheelchair and she looked at me and she said, please don't judge me. I cannot clean this up and I can't get any help. So I said, look, you're fine. I walked in, looked around. I heard water running, so I went and looked at the bathroom. And there was a toilet that looked about like this. Again, toilet paper thrown everywhere, but the tub was running. So I ended up giving her the best deal that I could, which is we didn't charge her anything. But we fixed the toilet, we fixed the tub and shower, and we tunneled up under the front of the house and fixed the leak. So luckily, we were able to take care of it for her. That's not something you want to ever have to do, but when you put yourself in that situation, you realize, hey, I want to help these people to the best of my ability. Guys, sometimes you walk into a situation that is just horrible. The other one that I walked into was a hoarder, where literally when you walk through the house, you had to keep your hands together because newspaper was stacked all the way to the ceiling. If you're a plumber, do me a favor and leave me a comment down below, or if you have pictures, go over to our subreddit, Roger Wakefield Post any pictures there. If you're a homeowner, all I can say is if you have to call a plumber, I hope you're not ever in that bad of a situation. And if you hadn't done it yet, please subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on anything. I'm Roger Wakefield, Lead AP, the expert plumber. I'll see you in the next video if you don't get flushed.